Hi there! In this video, I'm going to show you how you can clean up the video mocap from Move AI in Cascadeur. So I'm going to be using Move 1 on my iPhone to record a bit of a dance here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just had to keep the sound in. And here's the result, which actually looks really neat, given that's just a single camera, but there's still many ways we can improve it. So first, let's import this animation into Cascadeur. Once you do, it suggests that you should go to the rig mode to create the rig controllers. That has to be done on a fully symmetrical A or T pose. Mind you, it's not going to be the A pose that you do for camera alignment in Move AI. And since we're dealing with a humanoid character, we might as well use the quick rigging tool to speed up the process. In most cases, the skeleton would be fully recognized, but if it's not, you can drag and drop the joints to the corresponding nodes and then simply mirror it. So I'm doing the left side here, both for the body and for the hand. Then simply put the naming tag in, create mirror objects, add rig elements and generate the rig. So we end up with the animation that we imported on the skeleton with all the rig controllers. Now let's play back the animation. I was half tempted to keep the sound for this part as well, but then I made a conscious decision to stop being naughty. Now we can get to cleaning up the animation right away, or we can first retarget this animation onto a different model. For example, I'm going to be using one of the sample characters, Cassie. You can retarget the animation onto any character, given that they both have the auto-posing rig controllers. Now to do that, you have to select all the frames of the animation. Just click on the animation track to quickly select all the frames on the timeline. This animation has 332 frames, but in our new scene there's only 50. So let's increase this number, then come back to the original scene, go to Edit, Retargeting Copy. And now, in a scene with our new character, make sure you select enough frames on the timeline to fit the animation, then go to Edit, Retargeting Paste. And that's it. Now we have our animation on the character that we chose. Now let's get to cleaning up this animation. So here's the quick overview of what has to be done. We have to remove the jitters in the animation, fix the feed sliding, and also a couple of poses here and there, especially where the meshes go through each other. I'm gonna quickly save this scene before we get to work. To simplify the process, let's unbake the animation first. The animation unbaking tool will automatically set the keyframes and choose the best interpolation for the intervals. However, to ensure the best possible results, we have to make sure that the fulcrum points have been determined correctly. Let's turn autophysics on to check that. The fulcrum points are crucial for Cascadeur when deciding on the placement of the keyframes in the animation. Now the fulcrum points are displayed in the viewport outlined green. In the frames with no fulcrum points, autophysics will create ballistic trajectories, which basically means making jumps. As a rule, the fulcrum points are determined quite accurately, but sometimes you might want to correct them manually. By the way, we have a dedicated video on the fulcrum points and animation unbaking on our channel. I'll put a link in the description. Usually, correcting the fulcrum points does not take over a minute. However, this animation seems to be rather complex due to a large amount of small jumps, meaning the fulcrum points change a lot. Also, because the character moves around quite a lot, you can't really tell whether certain points are supposed to be fulcrum or not. Luckily, Move AI allows you to save the original video it used for mocap. However, it's a common practice to use the actual video it takes for any kinds of mocap. So go to File, Import, Reference Video. You will see the reference video appear on a separate plane. Go to the very first frame of the animation and move the plane so you could see both the character and the video, especially the feet. Also, while having the video selected, it's a good idea to put it on a separate track. However, the new track kept all the keyframes of the animation, and because of that, the plane would move back to the previous position on the other frames. To fix that, simply select all the frames on this track and press Alt-F on your keyboard to delete them. This way, I kept only a single frame for the reference plane with the position I need. Now, let's go through the animation and check whether the fulcrum points have been determined correctly. Should we find any frames where the feet are supposed to collide with the ground and therefore be fulcrum, and they are not, and we could see that by them not having the green outline, we can then change their settings. So select the point and the interval on the timeline. Then in the object properties, make sure the apply on selected interval is on. And in the fulcrum point tab, change the fulcrum state to in false. Same way, I'll check the fulcrum points on the rest of the animation. If you scroll the timeline and you see that physics does no longer work, just turn it off and turn it back on again. In the upcoming version, there's gonna be a separate button to just show the fulcrum points without having to turn the physics on. Now, if you come across a place where a point is not supposed to be fulcrum but still determined as such, simply set it to not fulcrum. So the animation that we see here is quite repetitive and the movements are pretty much similar, so I'm just gonna speed up through this process. Okay, all done. Now you can see that the physics assistant no longer has those high jumps it used to, and it moves much more natural. We will snap our animation to physics at some point, but first let's unbake it and edit it. To do that, select all the frames of the animation and click Animation Unbaking, and I end up with a set of keyframes and interpolations between them. Mind you, this process alone has already cleaned up some jitters and artifacts. Now let's clean up the rest. For example, here the hand moves through the mesh of the head. If you select the point and the frames on the timeline, you will be able to see its trajectory in the viewport. To quickly navigate between the keyframes, hold Shift and press A or D. Without Shift, the same buttons will navigate through every frame. So I'm going to go through the keyframes and fix the position of the hand in them while making sure that the overall trajectory is pretty much the same. All done? Now let's get to the feet. To kick things off, let me show you a couple of tricks that you can use to clean up your foot animation. First of all, there's a dedicated tool that prevents the feet from sliding. In this animation, the foot is sliding around, however, it's considered as fulcrum. By clicking on Fulcrum Motion Cleaning, it helps you get rid of the unwanted sliding. The other way would be to use the Copy tool. Go to one of the frames and copy the position of all the points of the foot by pressing Ctrl+C, then paste it in the desired frame by pressing Ctrl+V. Changing the pivot point can also prove very useful when working with feet. Simply right-click on any point to change the pivot. Any number of points can be rotated around any pivot. And another trick that can help you snap the feet to the ground. See, when using auto-posing, the inactive points will automatically collide with the ground. However, if the points are active, this will no longer happen. But deactivating those points will make them assume the most natural position and they will snap to the ground plane again. Now back to our animation, let's try and use some of those tricks. I will start by using the Fulcrum Motion Cleaning tool, then go through the whole animation and check if there's any more work that I should do. To make things more visual, I'll turn on the previous Go state and display it only for the keyframes. And once again, since this animation consists of a lot of repeated elements, I'm just gonna time-lapse through this section here. Well, I think it's taken me about 15 minutes to clean up the feet and fix the poses. So now let's move on to autophysics. Autophysics will help add the final touches to the animation, smooth it out, and make the animation more suited for your character's proportions. You can also make use of various physics filters. Adding secondary motion will be great, especially after using animation on baking. Or you can smooth the trajectory of the center of mass. But it really comes down to your personal preferences and the specific animation you're working with. Because look, using smooth trajectory for this one actually makes the character a bit too bouncy. So I'm probably not going to be using this one. But using secondary motion, however, will help bring back some of the nuances which might have been lost during the unbaking process. And once we're happy with the result, we can snap the animation to autophysics. Click yes in the pop-up warning. Now the autophysics is applied, and we ended up with a timeline with fixed interpolation. Now we can turn the autophysics off and check the result. Let's quickly compare what we've got to the original animation. To do that, I'll open up the original scene and then link the both scenes together. I'll offset the character from the initial scene a bit, and there we have it. So that's it, thank you for watching and best of luck with your animation.